I'm in the sun as much as I can. I don't wear sunscreen and I have not had a sunburn in forever. So in this episode, I'll share with you the 3 reasons why I don't wear sunscreen and top 5 tips that you can apply today to avoid sunburn naturally, meaning without any toxic sunscreens or wearing sunglasses or clothing for that matter. And so let's start with the 3 reasons why I don't wear sunscreen. And reason number 1, it's not necessary. Think about it. Sunscreen is a relatively modern invention, dating back to just in 1938 when Franz Kreiter, a Swiss chemistry student, got sunburned while climbing a mountain in Austria, of all countries. And it didn't become popular, sunscreen that is, until the late 1970s. So what have humans done before, while during a time when skin cancer wasn't really a thing? At least nowhere near to the extent that it is today. And as far as I'm concerned, humans have been under the sun, exposed to natural sunlight without sunscreen, sunglasses for millions of years. But even if you don't believe in evolution and you think humans were put on Earth not too long ago, it's been at least a couple of thousand years, I would argue. And no sunscreen, no sunglasses, no skin cancer. So I believe sunscreen is not necessary. The second reason, equally important I think, is that most modern sunscreen is terrible for your health. Even the mineral-based ones. But just, to start out with the most prevalent sunscreens, the non-mineral based ones, the regular ones, so to say, they all contain endocrine disrupting chemicals such as BP or 4-MBC that mess with your hormones, with your endocrine system, that act like estrogen in your body and dock to the estrogen receptors in your cells and cause, fertility issues, low testosterone levels in men, pregnancy problems, inability to lose weight, weight gain, and a lot of other things that I discussed in my article about endocrine disrupting chemicals, also known as xenoestrogens. And if you just look at, not to pick out any particular brand, but Hawaiian Tropic is like the best off list, containing an insane number of ingredients that include the word fen or bens and parabens that are absolutely terrible for your health because they get absorbed through the skin, get into your bloodstream, and cause a host of issues, again, all of which I've discussed in my article about xenoestrogens. But even the mineral-based ones, before we, like in the Kummer family, before we figured out that sunscreen is not good, period, we used mineral-based sunscreens. The best, most expensive sunscreens we could find, that are, good for reefs and the skin and everything. But even studies have shown that mineral-based sunscreens that contain zinc oxide, one of the common ingredients in those sunscreens, loses much of its effectiveness and becomes toxic after 2 hours of exposure to ultraviolet radiation. So even that, you can use them for 2 hours and then get out of the sun or take off that sunscreen. The problem is, the mineral-based ones are typically so sticky that getting them off after 2 hours is going to be a challenge. And we don't even know yet what other potential side effects those minerals or mineral-based sunscreens have over time. So that's reason number 2. Sunscreen is just terrible for you, even the better ones. And the third reason is that sun exposure without wearing sunscreen or sunglasses is incredibly important for our health. Direct sunlight supports a healthy circadian rhythm, so daytime alertness and sleep. Without sun exposure, our circadian rhythm gets negatively impacted and our sleep suffers. Not a good thing. Our daytime alertness suffers. Not a good thing. I want to be energetic and alert in the morning, and I want to be sleepy when it's time to go to bed. Sun exposure is also incredibly important for vitamin D production, which is again important for maintaining optimal immune health and immune function. If you don't get in the sun, if you have low vitamin D levels, we've seen this over the past couple of years, with, some of the viral infections that were going around and still are, that people with low vitamin D levels were much more affected, had much more severe outcomes than those who had high vitamin D levels. And that again goes back to regular sun exposure without, wearing protection, without filtering, trying to filter out that UV radiation as it hits your skin and your retina. Sunlight is also crucially important for testosterone production, both in men and in women. Testosterone is not only a hormone that's important for men, it's also important for women, to a lesser extent maybe, but still. Sunlight influences the release of hormones, including serotonin and melatonin in the evening. So if you don't get out in the sun, your sleep and your hormone levels generally might suffer. That might cause then, anxiety and mental issues if your serotonin levels are off, and your inability to fall asleep at the proper time or waking up in the middle of the night, if your melatonin levels are off. It also improves calcium absorption, which is important for proper bone health and dental health. So, if you're not in the sun and you have a lot of cavities, maybe that's the reason. There are obviously also dietary factors that are involved that are important, but still, even if you get enough calcium, you need to make sure it gets absorbed, and sunlight is crucially important to support that absorption. It also sunlight triggers also the production of melanin, which is a pigment, a natural skin pigment that we'll talk about more here in a little bit. That not only makes your skin tan, but also protects your skin from the potential damage of UV radiation. And last but not least, it's probably not the last reason, but another important one, sunlight reduces the risk of developing seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. So again, if you're not in the best state of mental health, sunlight can make a dramatic difference in how you feel and the quality of your life after all. In fact, a study from 2016, I'm going to link it in the show notes, said or concluded that the avoidance of sun exposure was a risk factor for all cause of death of the same magnitude as smoking. So let that sink in for a moment. Avoiding the sun poses the same risk of all cause death. So it's not just about, causing lower melatonin levels or circadian rhythm or whatever. No, all cause of death at the same magnitude as smoking. And we all, I think, can agree that smoking is a significant risk factor for all cause of death. So, and another study that was published in the Journal of Dermatoendocrinology clearly states that the benefits of sun exposure outweigh the negatives. So those are the 3 reasons why I don't wear sunscreen and I expose myself, my naked skin, or as much as I can, as much as socially acceptable, to natural sunlight without wearing sunscreen or wearing sunglasses. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the 5 tips that you can implement today, ideally, to avoid sunburn naturally. And number 1 is to stop wearing sunglasses. I know this might sound entirely counterintuitive and counterproductive because, your eyes are very sensitive and you need to protect them from the harsh UV light, etc. The problem is that when UV light enters your eyes, then cells in your body, now they're called melanocytes, they produce a natural skin pigment called melanin. We talked about this before. And that melanin not only gives you a tan, but it also protects your exposed skin from the damaging effects of UV radiation. So if you wear sunglasses, you interfere with that process, leading to lower melanin levels and you to an increased risk of UV damage. And specifically, melanin absorbs some of those UV rays and transforms the energy into harmless heat through a process called ultra-fast internal conversion. So in other words, before that UV light can damage your skin, it just dissipates as heat and, no harm done. And that prevents UV rays from causing direct damage to the DNA and cellular structures within the skin. Also, melanin scatters some of that UV light. So, when that UV light hits the skin, it scatters it and also reduces the amount of radiation that can penetrate the deeper layers of your skin where it can cause damage. And melanin is also an antioxidant, or it has antioxidant properties, and that can help combat the oxidative stress caused by UV exposure. And oxidative stress can lead to cell damage. That's, that's a fact that has been clearly studied, and it is a contributing factor to skin aging and skin cancer. However, by reducing the oxidative stress that UV radiation can cause, or UV exposure can cause, you actually reduce the risk of any permanent damage. And last but not least, melanin can shield the nucleus of the skin cell, thereby protecting the DNA from UV-induced mutations that in turn can then lead to skin cancers like melanoma. And so again, wearing sunglasses inhibits all of those protective mechanisms. You're basically hamstringing your body if you go out in the sun and wear sunglasses. If you don't wear sunglasses, if you let that light get into your eyes, obviously don't stare into the sun when it's high on in the sky and it hurts. but just getting that UV light into your retina, into your eyes, can allow the body to protect itself. And that's one of the best things you can do to reduce your chances of burning. Number two is to slowly build up your exposure. If you're pale white and you've not exposed your skin to the sun in years, then it's probably not a good idea to start doing that in August, when the sun is very strong, or in July. So you want to start building up your exposure already during the colder months of the year. I go out in winter when the UV light is significantly weaker and when the sun is lower, when the light comes in at a lower angle, and I expose myself, my naked skin, or as much as I can, to natural sunlight without wearing sunglasses and without wearing any sunscreen. And if you keep doing this already during the colder months of the year, then you're building basically a sun callus, right? And that can help you then when UV radiation peaks in summer to avoid or significantly reduce the chances of burning. And that might take a couple of seasons to really build up. Usually if you start early in winter, by the time summer rolls around, you have enough sun callus to deal with UV radiation for extended periods. Now, you might not be able to be under the sun for 8 hours, but a couple of hours should not be an issue if you have built up your exposure slowly. And that's the second very easy thing that you can do. And now it's getting colder, it's fall here at the time of this recording, now it might be time to already start exposing your skin, to UV light when the sun is not as strong anymore. Third tip, avoid seed oils in favor of saturated fats. Seed oils, meaning vegetable oils, technically they're not really vegetable oils, because a canola oil or a sunflower oil, they are not made from vegetables, they are made from seeds. And the problem with seed oils in particular, or more specifically with polyunsaturated fatty acids, is that they are very unstable. They have a lot of double bonds that easily break, so the oil easily oxidizes. And when that happens, it causes inflammation in your skin, and that reduces your body's ability to deal with UV radiation in an appropriate manner. In other words, by consuming a lot of seed oils, it increases your skin's susceptibility to burning. And I've noticed a dramatic improvement in my body's ability to handle sun exposure without wearing sunscreen after I cut out all of the seed oils from my diet. No more vegetable oils, no more seed oils, only saturated fats from butter, tallow, ghee, and other sources, mostly animal-based sources with low PUFA contents, low polyunsaturated fatty acids, and that has made a dramatic difference. And I've heard that from many others who have gone a similar route, that they can handle much more sun without burning just by removing seed oils. Tip number 4, embrace an animal-based diet. And that does not mean you have to go carnivore or you have to be super strict and eat nothing but meat or nothing but animals. But there are certain nutrients in animal-based products that your body requires to safely process UV light from the sun and to make melanin, for that matter. And there is one amino acid in particular that is required by the melanin pathway, and that is tyrosine. And with the help of tyrosine, your body can make melanin. But that's not the only one. There are other micronutrients that are required to protect the skin against UV damage from UV light, including vitamin A, or retinol more specifically, cholesterol, saturated fats, and copper. And the meat and organs of responsibly raised animals are the best sources of those micronutrients, so you can help your body defend itself against UV radiation. And if you're not big into organs, if you're not big into, if the amount of meat that you consume might be limited, then one of the easiest things you can do is to supplement with freeze-dried beef organ capsules that contain at least all of the micronutrients. Now, doing so doesn't replace following an appropriate diet, which in my opinion is an animal-based diet. But even if you do nothing else, getting those micronutrients into your diet, getting those amino acids into your diet can make a significant difference in how much sun you can safely expose yourself to without burning, without causing permanent damage to your skin and then maybe cancer in the long term. So check out MK Supplements. That's a freeze-dried beef organs brand. That's my freeze-dried beef organ brand. Contains all the micronutrients that you need to enable your body to deal with sunlight appropriately. Number 5, expose yourself to morning sunlight. That's one of the things that is very safe to do, very easy to do, and it's also very pleasant to do. So every morning what I do is, especially when the sun is out, but even when it's cloudy, I try to go out and see where the sun is, especially when it's just above the horizon, and I just look into the sun. And by exposing my naked eyes to that early morning sunlight, which is, doesn't harm my eyes, obviously, it doesn't feel uncomfortable, it doesn't feel painful, I not only sleep better, but it also helps my skin to become more resilient to the light. Obviously, you want to, again, expose as much of your skin as possible to that UV light. And, well, it's actually in the morning, the sunlight actually has a lot of red and near infrared light, which can help make your skin more resilient to UV light. So by exposing yourself to red and near infrared, you can actually improve your resilience then to that UV light that occurs in greater ratios or in greater amounts later in the day. And of course, if you live somewhere where there's not a whole lot of sun, or maybe during the colder months of the year where you don't get as much sun, using maybe a red light therapy pen like the one I have in my office, could be an alternative, but I highly recommend using the natural sunlight as much as you can. And, that is pretty much it with that. I used to suffer from what my doctor back in the days when I was a kid called a sun allergy. So I would go out in the sun and I would get this itchy, thing here on my chest, red little dots, and I was miserable in the sun. And that led me really to avoid the sun whenever possible for most of my youth, or for a significant amount of times. I don't have any of that anymore. I enjoy the sun. I'm out in the sun as much as I can for hours at a time, without wearing sunscreen, without burning, most importantly, because, obviously I can always choose to not wear sunscreen. If I burn, that's obviously not a good thing. I have not burned in forever. And if I know that I have to be in the sun for much longer than I can handle, I'm not, a superhuman. My skin's resilience has a limit, of course. And so what I do is, if I know that I'm out in the sun for extended periods, maybe all day under harsh sunlight, then I just wear, long sleeve shirts, instead of wearing sunscreen. Sunscreen typically I try to avoid whenever possible. I try to block it with clothing that's non-toxic, some natural material. And that's pretty much it. There is no need for sunscreen usually, if you follow the tips that I mentioned in this podcast episode. And I'd like to hear from you though. Have you tried out any of that? And if so, what has your experience been? Maybe, if you watch this episode on YouTube, leave me a comment or shoot me an email. I'm always interested in hearing what you guys think, what you guys have done, and how things have been working for you. And so with that, we're gonna wrap it up. If you like this episode, I hope you did. Keep watching. See you in the next one, hopefully. Otherwise, shoot me an email what I could have done better. Until next time.